So tonight we have with us, in order of speaking tonight, we have our second year Westchester Community Foundation Fellow, Stephanie Perez, followed by our Rittenberg Artist in Residence, Carley Holzem, Artist in Residence, Christine Raposas, and our second year Artist in Residence, Evelyn Mtika. I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie. So you can take it away, Stephanie. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Regina. Hi everyone. I'm just gonna share my screen. Okay. So yes, my name is Stephanie Perez, and I'm in my second year of the Westchester Community Fellowship. I'm gonna start this presentation just with a quick refresher on like my background, if you didn't see my video from last year. But then I'll be talking about what I've been working on this year and what I'm looking forward to. So I'm from the Bronx, although I did move between New York and Connecticut to a bunch of different towns when I was younger. Now I'm currently in Harrison, New York. Um, this is me as a kid painting. I always was a crafty child, but I didn't really get into clay until I moved to Portchester for my sophomore year because I was introduced by some friends to the Clay Art Center for the around the world in clay class, which this picture on the right is just a little mosaic we had made during that class. Um, since I was part of this class, it also gave me the opportunity to assist summer camp for the kids during the summer. So I did that for the rest of my high school years. After I graduated high school, I went directly into college. I went to Fordham. I got my Bachelor of Science in Psychology and Sociology. Um, I graduated during the pandemic, so after that, I kind of took a little bit of a break and decided that, I missed art. I wasn't able to take like a single art class during college, so I did have the opportunity to come back and I assisted classes for a little bit, and then they let me start teaching, and that's where I'm at now. Before I dive into like all my own art stuff, I just wanted to do a quick talk about community arts. I teach and taught a lot of students over these past 3 years. I teach kids mostly, but I do teach some adult classes as well right now, just a few though. Um, and there was one day that we did last year, well, 3 days. We did a 3-day workshop at JFK, which is the elementary school in Portchester. And we did, I think it was 11 classes in total over those 3 days where we taught all of the fifth graders. So I believe it was like 130 fifth graders, which was really, really nice because obviously I teach a lot of kids classes, but they're usually after school, and those are like limited to like 12 to 15 students per class. So it was really nice to be able to actually, do it for all of one grade in the school. And then last year I got to set up my first Rising Stars for the community arts. This was the community arts half. The other half was all the other adult students and everything. Yeah, I put some pictures here. I was just really proud of all my students' work. I think like this was all the high schoolers stuff and the middle schoolers in the front on their little pedestals, who I taught, and then all the plates in the back were kids that I taught too. So it just came out really nice, and I was really proud of them. And it was nice to see all their families come and like be happy all about their stuff. Um, the last time we met, I was only like a few months into my fellowship, so I didn't really feel like I had that much of a range of work to show. But this past year, I really wanted to like embrace the opportunities that, Clay Arts Center had and try out a bunch of new things. So I just want to do some highlights. This is us doing Luster. This is when Jess Levin was still here. Shout out Jess. This was my one piece. I had done another few. I don't know where they went. I don't love how this piece came out, but I do think it was interesting to try out. And I feel like now that I tried it, I do have a much better idea of what I would use it on going forward. I thought that I would like the gold a lot, but I actually like the opal the best on the pieces themselves. And then this is me for the Wunderbang workshop. I did not make that. I I could never make that probably, but maybe one day, I'm hopeful. It was really fun to watch. He was a great potter. And then this is my little wood shop, not wood shop, wood wood carving, not wood carving, block printing. Sorry, guys. Block printing. I carved out this little Taino cookie, and then I started to carve out this realistic cookie. I did this once in high school, but I only ever did it like in the 2D sense, so we just like printed right on paper. I don't know why I never thought that you could do this with clay. Like I feel like every day I'm learning that I know less about clay than I thought. But I think it's a really interesting thing to just keep in my mind for like, you know, any other thing because you can print this into the clay directly. You can use it as a stamp. Um, you can make a mold out of it. Um, I also took Jess Palmer's jewelry class, which was really great. Um, I learned a whole lot there too. These are some pendants on the left that I made for my mom. I blew them up a lot here. They're actually, I don't know, I want to say the size of like a penny. I know this is like a lot different than my usual stuff I make, but I think I really enjoyed like doing the fine detail um in the underglazes. And then this is just a little face I made. It's also really small. And then I put in some pendants that I put into the holiday shop and a few of my favorite ornaments that I made. We also had, as a resident, we have to make 50 pieces for hand in hand, and we all did wall pockets. Um, I really like how mine came out. I was struggling with it in the beginning. The idea I had for it was a lot different, but I changed it up because I felt less connected to it. I added faces to all of mine, and I think it was really fun because I don't usually use like not real glazes, but I typically use like under glazes or washes or clear glaze. Um, but this time I got to try out like let's see, some of them are different glaze combinations, but I settled on the red one. I feel like I don't know, I thought it looked really cool in the eyes and how they all came out kind of different because it was a cone 10 firing, which I also very rarely do. I do more cone 6 stuff. So I just put some of my favorites up on the screen. And even though this is also not like functional pieces, I feel like this is the most closely related to my own body of work than the other few things. So sometime last year, I don't really know what came over me to try to make some cups. They're not bad. I think they're decent. They're like my first real cups that I had made. Um, but I had them sitting in my space and somebody saw them and wanted to commission me for them, which thank you, Mr. G. I won't expose your name, but thank you. I hope you end up liking the cups. The ones on the right side are a few from this new batch. I'm not gonna show them all yet because it's for him. Um, I I feel like they're a little bit stressful for me to make just because I'm so not used to having to like worry about making something food safe since I do a lot of sculptures. But I think it was and is like interesting to try to solve those issues as they like arise. Um, so just sticking with the practical functional theme, I made this big plant pot. I did recently glaze it. I don't love the glaze, so I'm probably gonna redo it. And then I also just made this little like holder for some plates for my mom because she got some cats. And I think this was just like a fun project for me. I do think I learned a lot about the issues that come with building larger and how to solve and also build differently to be able to handle the weight. And I think that's going to help me with my own stuff because I do plan on building larger for my things for the show. And then I just wanted to share my last personal project that I did over the year. This was for my boyfriend. It's actually a little box. Now I'm realizing I only put three of the four sides. That's okay. It's a box that opens up and there's these little pinch pot cups in it that sit in divots and it's for like pills. Um, I don't know. I really enjoyed it. It was like a personal project for me. Like each of these little designs is something meaningful to me and him. And this is our home we currently live in. And as you can see, this is a little Nikki Lau um like picture because we always get her ornaments for Christmas. And then a kusama. And then so I'm gonna go into like my inspirations and things now for my more sculptural body of work. So obviously I'm influenced by my background, my psychology and sociological background. Um, I've been thinking a lot about my class I took in college called Discussed in Psychology and Literature. We discussed various types of disgust, like core disgust, animal nature, interpersonal and moral disgust. And I think it's interesting because this emotion of disgust kind of, initially was designed to keep our body safe, but actually governs like a lot of our beliefs and actions. Um, and I find that the ways that this shapes like our judgments and perceptions to be like interesting but also unsettling because it kind of defines what is normal and acceptable. And I think the idea of societal judgment and how it can make like one group of people or a person seem less human is something that I've been thinking about like with my sculptures, and I wonder if because I like leave out a face or change a body part, if it makes people feel weird and maybe not able to connect with them in a certain way, but I'm not really sure. It's just something I've been thinking about. And I've also been drawing influence from like painters. The one on the top or the bottom left is a painting by Boschart, and he does a lot of these organic imagery pieces, which I'm kind of getting into because I want to start having more of a narrative of to my work. So I want to add some kind of not background, but some other more organic pieces that may not necessarily have faces or bodies on them, but it would sit with them. Um, and I've been also into the Paczynski. I'm sorry if I butchered his name. Um, he's the one on the top and bottom right. I I feel like you guys may have seen him before. He has a lot of like utopian realism, but it's also like really dark. And he lived in also a time of war, so he was really influenced by those things. And then I've also been into like 70s sci-fi and fantasy art, which I feel like combines like futuristic themes with like surrealistic elements a little bit. And I'm liking like the airbrush like vibrant colors right now. So I want to kind of combine that um somehow in my show, like um that with maybe like opposing with washes and things like that. Um okay, so now I'm gonna go into some of my pieces. This is a video. I couldn't find a way to take a good picture of it, so I'm just gonna put the video on. It is not finished because I'm still deciding on what colors I want to use for it. I think this specific piece reminds me of disease, which then like makes me think about in my class we learned about these two laws of sympathetic magic related to disgust. It's the law of contagion and the law of similarity, and it's basically well, the contagion was basically like once in contact, always in contact. So like if I were to touch something disgusting one time, now I'm just considered disgusting, and I like everybody will think of me in that way. And then this law of similarity is if something resembles something disgusting, it takes on those traits, even if it might not be. Um, yeah, I don't know. That's just what that piece made me think of. Um, so this is a form I've been messing around with for a while. I really like the organic ness of it. I've been trying to play with like textures on the surface. Um, this is a wall hanging, but I took pictures on its side because I felt it wasn't coming out too well on the wall itself. I don't know if I'm gonna do this colorway exactly anymore. I'm making a few more like maquettes of different shapes similar to it. This one piece on the left was just for fun, like an underwater scene. I wanted to just see how the different textures would look with different underglazes, but I have not worked on the one on the left too much just because I've kind of moved on to the white stoneware a lot, but I do plan on finishing it and using it as like an example to see how it comes out. Um, I've also been making a bunch of these like smaller faceless forms with some underglazes on them. I actually made a bunch more because I was going to make molds out of them, but I did accidentally waterboard them in my wet box. So they fell apart. I need to remake them all, but I plan on doing that really soon so that I could try out a bunch of different color schemes to find which ones I like best. I also plan on doing a few of these for my show, but on a larger scale. That's why I want to test them out on small first because I can't I have a issue with committing to the colors of the piece because I always kind of want it to change, but I know that's not really a possibility with ceramics, you know. And then lastly, here's just a few more tests that I've been working on. The pieces on the left are different washes on a face with clear glaze over them. Um, and then the middle one is from my molds that I had made. I put a bunch of texture on it and then did some underglazes with some different washes on top of it to see how the layering effect would work. I found it really interesting that at Cone 6, like some of the washes fluxed. I didn't realize, I think it was the cobalt that did that. So I wonder if I put like a thinner coat, if that would still happen or not. Um, and then on the left, on the right, sorry, this is one I did with oil paint. I actually like really like the look of this. I'm still trying out different things to see how to seal it well enough that both that like the oil color wouldn't leach out, but also like still give me a look that I'm looking I want. Like I don't want it to be so shiny or waxy. I don't know. I have to try about a bunch of different things out. Um, but that's what I'm up to right now. I feel like a lot of tests are happening over this past year. I've tried over like I want to say 10 to 12 different clay bodies, and I've been doing a bunch of underglaze tests with clear glaze over them. I did a bunch of, wash tests, a whole lot of testing, but I'm about to be in the zone with pumping out my own stuff now that the holidays are over. Um, so that is it. Thank you for watching. This is my contact info if you have any more questions or if you just want to chat. Thank you. I'm going to stop the share now.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. That was great. Carly, you're up next.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. So I'm Carley Holzem. I use she, her pronouns. Okay. I grew up in Mosinee, Wisconsin. The picture, it's just a small rural Midwest town right in the middle of Wisconsin. The picture on the left is right outside of my bedroom window, actually. And I think it was the first snowfall. We get a lot of snow most years. And that's my dog, Opal. It's always my favorite snowfall, too, because it's still kind of warm. And then the photo on the right is Wisconsin in the summer. Very beautiful. And we have a lot of lakes, too. So, and then I got my BFA in ceramics at the University of Wisconsin Stout. So I moved out to Menominee. But I kind of fell in love with ceramics in high school because I had an amazing art teacher, Katie Maratz. She also went to Menominee Stout for ceramics. She kind of taught me how to throw, painting, sculpture, all of the above. And then when I got to college, I had Kate Morey and Jeff Wheeler. I was Kate's TA for like 3 years, maybe more. She taught me a lot about teaching. And Jeff, I look at his pots a lot. I'm sure there are some similarities there. So in college, I think the first thing I was kind of obsessed with were these Neolithic tripod pitchers. They were originally made to heat water over fire, and they looked at the long necks and beaks of birds, which I still look at today, like how connecting different pieces are kind of like an animal in a sense in my work. So I also liked the dramatic gesture and movement that they had. And so the right picture is an original one, and then on the left are mine. They were actually smaller in size, probably like they were smaller, not very big, and they weren't very functional either. I was more so interested in like the movement and how to connect all these pieces together to make one form. And also I was using cone 10 reduction and porcelain. So this was just like a really basic celadon that I really loved at that time. And then going to my thesis, I made a breakfast, lunch, and dinner set. So over COVID, I had a little studio at my dad's place, and I found a fence in his garage, and I took the wires off to make a wiggle wire, and I played around with that a little bit in that summer. And then I didn't return to the wiggle wire until my thesis. So this is how I kind of incorporated those two things. You can see the tripod forms are still there. And then I use underglaze and glaze. I was also doing cone 6 glazes, so I switched. And I really liked the idea and the narrative behind sets. So that's why I did the sets along with, I did a performance. I didn't do the performance, but during the opening, I had my friends sit at tables and eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. This was just a way for me to celebrate sharing food with someone you love and just like the community aspect of ceramics and physically using it, which I feel like not a lot of people portray in galleries because it's just messy, I guess, food in galleries. So that was a really great experience seeing everyone just watch them eat. They couldn't talk to the viewers or anything. And then after college, I went to Northern Clay Center. Here, I got to really focus on my technical skills and functional work, just kind of improving my skills. Because in college, I didn't feel that I was at the place I wanted to be at, skill-wise, I guess, like throwing functional, like real production energy. So I got that opportunity here because I was living with my mother, and that helped me a lot. I got to spend most days, I drove 45 minutes to the studio, worked like 6-hour days, got a bit of like that full-time functional potter feel, which was nice. And here I did a bunch of glaze tests, switched to cone 10 oxidation, and that I felt made my porcelain work more functional and more sturdy, harder. And that's what I'm sticking to today as well. And I also had the time to experiment with larger forms. So the table on the left is kind of like a bird bath type table. I threw in like multiple sections and attached. And I'm also making another one because I want to like perfect it a little bit. And then on the right is a little cupcake stand that you can stack. Those were challenging, but really great for me to play with. And that's what Northern Clay Center allowed me to do too, is just like play more. And so I got to explore forms that I never really would have thought of before. So like the coffee pot on the left was really fun, and I kind of stepped away from the tripod form a little bit, which was, I think, good for me because I feel like I get fixated on ideas and then it's hard for me to branch out from those. So I made some, those are ashtrays, which are really fun and cute and just like lighthearted. And then the olive oil and vinegar set with the tray on the right. And then over the summer, I actually taught my very first advanced throwing class, which was a great introduction to coming here because I'm doing a lot of teaching now. And I also biked a lot. So when I wasn't in the studio, I biked. And then there was this little place on the side of my trail. It was a barn that you could just like buy self-serve ice cream. It was really great. And then at Northern Clay Center, I also was able to connect my drawing to my ceramics, which was not even a thought of mine in college because those just felt like two very separate things to me. So in college, I did a lot of monotype prints, which is a reductive way of making an image. So you wipe away ink and then you layer 3 different colors on top of each other. So that's also where I got the idea to have like the layers of underglaze with the texture with the glaze on top. Is just more depth that I could get. So the image on the left is the monotype print, a little bit skewed perspectives. And also I only draw queer people to represent my community. And I just find that queer people are beautiful. And I've only ever really drawn women, non-binary people. And then the piece on the right was, I think, my very first ceramic drawing. And then so these are meant to be wall hangings, reminiscent of a picture frame. Actually, they were originally trays. So now they're just wall hangings, which is kind of funny. I'm like, no function. I'm getting away from that the tiniest bit. And they're supposed to just be casual, candid photos of everyday life. And also they're supposed to feel more like a sketch. So not really like a finished solid drawing painting. I kind of like the imperfections and the skewed perspectives, things feeling kind of off and awkward. And then now I'm here at Clay Art Center and I've just been teaching a lot, and this has been a really great experience for me. It's crazy teaching the things that my teachers have taught me. I've noticed that I've been using like the language they used while they were teaching me, and I'm just like passing that on, which feels kind of amazing. And so these are some of my demos from my advanced class. Hello, advanced class, if you're here. So the left are some jars. This is a overhang lid jar and a little box jar. Those are really fun. And then the sectional base, and most recently the basket on the right. So, and then these are my beginner demos, which I also love teaching beginners because it's always nice like seeing other people falling in love with pottery, because it's a very like physical thing and it's messy and it's not for everyone. So it's just like seeing that moment when they like kind of get in the groove and are making like 5 things in like 20 minutes. I'm just like, that's great. So this is a faceted cup on the left, my most recent one. It was really fun teaching faceting too, because that's kind of what I love and what I do the most. So it's like being able to share that is great thing. And then the simple bowls in the middle, and then the mugs. Teaching handles is fun. And then what I've been working personally on my own work are, again, the tables. So the one on the left has, you can't see it in the picture, but it has a top to it. So my first one was more like a bird bath where you could put like water in it, but this one is like flat top, wall, flat bottom. And then it did unfortunately break. So I will be glazing it and then epoxying it after the glaze firing. But that's why I'm doing it again, because I really want to like figure out a system where I can make tables and furniture easily, maybe. Maybe not easily, but I also want to, I like pushing porcelain because we all know porcelain likes to warp at cone 10. And if you don't, it and then on the right are a teapot and jar. So I've been kind of being inspired by my classes recently. They also have been pushing me to look at things outside of what I would normally make. So it's like I have to look up new projects, and then that kind of inspires me to broaden the pieces I make in my own style. So I've also loved making teapots, and Clay Art Center has tea time, and I just feel like tea is everywhere here. So, and then I'm also underglazing a lot of work that I brought here. So ideas going towards my show, I kind of want to highlight how functional pottery makes life special just by having like a piece in your home that you use every day, and how it can like brighten up your day or something. It brings like fantasy within everyday life, and you're kind of like building a home, and that I think is an important part of everyone's life. It's kind of like a universal feeling of home. And that's also why I'm expanding more into furniture, hopefully larger tables, but porcelain might not make that happen. Might have to like wean away from porcelain for a little bit. And then I also just want to continue making art for queer people, for my community, expressing myself. And yeah, so getting into my color palette, I look at Rothko recently, which in the past I never really looked at other artists, or I looked at artists, but I could never like connect my art with artists. But recently I've been able to like pause and start seeing like how my art relates to the world around me. And I've noticed that it's just like Rothko paintings, the depth from the layers that he places like paint on top of paint on top of paint, and they're so like large, and they're like almost meditative because they're so big. And he also uses emotion within his paintings, so he expresses emotion through color, which I'm personally really interested in. Like my senior thesis, I used pink for breakfast because I thought it was such a like a soft and subtle color. I like to have a language through my colors, and color is just really important to me and it makes me happy, so I include it. And then I use yellow to portray almost like daylight, daytime. It's like a happier color almost. And then I have this beautiful purple now. In college, I used a light blue Celadon, but now I've gotten to this purple that it feels more of like a mysterious, magical, deep color. And he also portrays that in his paintings, which I love. I also look at reptiles, flowers, animals, all of the above. I grew up in nature, so nature also inspires my visual language in my art, but there are just too many things. So yeah, that's most of what I've been thinking about working on. This is my Instagram and email if you want to get a hold of me at all. So I'm gonna stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Carly. Christine, you're up next. Thank you.
All right, one second. Okay. So I'm Christine Raposas, and I'm a new resident, started in September. So I grew up in a small town in central Pennsylvania called Hollidaysburg. And I got a BFA from Alfred University in 2022. And then in 2023, I completed a post-bac program and then found myself here. So I actually started out as a painter, and then I stuck with that in high school and then partially into college. So my first few semesters at Alfred, I was mostly concentrated on painting, and then expected to continue on that path, but kind of randomly fell into ceramics. I really didn't like glazes, so I decided to take a glaze class to try to help that, and then surprisingly, I really liked it. So that kind of pushed me more into making sculptures and experimenting with glazes too, because ceramics kind of had a lot to offer, and the atmosphere there was just really friendly. So these are some of my more recent pieces. You can see there's a lot of like stray, out of place body parts. And this interest started with a movie that my sister and I watch every year called Epic. And then there's two slugs named Mub and Grub in it. And they have eyeballs that stick out of their head, and they're very proud of them, and I'm kind of drawn to them because they look so stupid. So this is probably the piece that is most inspired by them. And like after the eyeballs, it kind of expanded more into like the fingers and heads, but it all kind of started with the slugs. And then another earlier inspiration of mine was bacteria under a microscope. I really liked the abstraction and like the repetition, especially that created the patterns. And I really liked the bright colors too. So the patterns were kind of interesting for me to kind of incorporate into my work. And it kind of formed a foundation for some of my earlier sculptures. From there, I was really interested in the body parts and repetition, and I didn't exactly want my pieces to be creepy, but I did want them to be unsettling, so that's kind of where my glaze comes in. So when I've exhausted my creative juices for making sculptures, I like to kind of switch over to the left side of my brain a little bit and work a little bit more on glaze testing. So I always have something to work on in the studio. So I first got into glaze testing whenever I took a few glaze chemistry classes at Alfred with some really great professors that were pretty inspiring. And after that, I decided to do my honors thesis on textured glazes at different cones, with a lot of help from those same professors. So these are some pieces where I think the glazes were a bit successful. They still have like the fingers and eyes and heads, and I wanted the glaze to kind of be obnoxious and like loud enough to kind of balance it out a little bit. So I also wanted to work on color palettes a little bit, because I usually get a little carried away, and every glaze in front of me, I can't stop myself from putting all of it on a sculpture. So I'm trying to be a little more selective and make some type of like color palette for my pieces. These are some of the artists that really inspire me with the glazes. I really like their textures and their colors, and how the glaze kind of affects the shape of the piece too. I really like Corey Brown's glazes. They're just so fun. So then another major inspiration for me would be El Nido, Palawan in the Philippines. So I'm half Filipina on my father's side, and we visited some of the places he lived whenever I was 15. And that's him in a tree in the middle photo. Yeah, but I was immediately drawn to the town of El Nido in Palawan, because of its unique geography, and then the really bright buildings. It was kind of a rainbow, and I liked it compared to the kind of more neutral color palette of the United States. And my dad said that it's so bright because the roofs of the houses like reflect the sunlight because they're so bright. And that's like less expensive than air conditioning, so it's pretty practical. Yeah. So my color palette reminds me of the coastal towns, and it's kind of a way to like tangibly preserve my memories of those places. This piece is the biggest piece I've ever made, and I liked that it gave me a lot of room to add color and texture to. And the ocean is also a really big inspiration to my work. I really like the turquoise color of it, and I love the altered state of gravity. I try my best to make my pieces look like they're made with less gravity, like they're made underwater or in outer space. And I like the like organicness of coral too. This is my favorite inspiration, and his name is the butete fish, and it's a puffer fish, and it bit my dad one time. That's off topic. But the first time I saw it, it was like not inflated, so it was the shape of that. And then I found out it inflates a little bit. So I really kind of want to capture him and his like ability to transform a little bit. So this was my BFA show, and I called it Fingers Crossed. And what was special about this show to me was that it was the first time I got to see my work in an environment that I kind of curated. I really enjoy Kusama's work and how she kind of takes over a space. And this was the first time like I got to attempt to do that too. Yeah, so I painted the walls and floor and pedestals turquoise, yellow, and pink to kind of go with the colors of my pieces. So this is a piece in the show called 15 Faced. It was one of the first pieces I made that had an excessive amount of body parts on it. And then this piece was called Lift a Finger. And I built this one on a piece of foam and just kept like rotating it until I thought I liked the shape of it. So then I bisqued it and I realized I didn't actually like it at all. So I kind of put it on a shelf for a couple months, and then when I came back to it, I added a piece like to the bottom, and I kind of lifted it up and gave it a bit less gravity. So then I ended up liking it. And then this is from a show I had in 2023 called The Secret to Happiness is Many Small Lamps. My sister won't stop buying lamps, and she claims that's the reason. So it felt like a pretty fitting name for the show. Yeah, so in this show, I kind of wanted to experiment with using fabric and a draping tool around it to kind of create one bigger piece. So then this is a more close-up of that piece. And I just like that it kind of combined like the 4 separate heads to make it into like one bigger piece. And then same with the piece on the right. Around that time, I also decided to give functional work another go. So these are some drawings of some lamps and candlestick holders. And then these are some of the results. And it was a bit of a switch from making bigger sculptures to more functional pieces, but I liked it because I could still kind of do whatever I wanted surface wise on the lamps and didn't really have to be food safe. So then I'm to my time at the Clay Arts Center now. And I've been working on sculptures and then some sculptural vases. And there's been a lot of hands involved, I would say. So these are some photos of that. And then behind the photos, there's some of the paint chips that I use to kind of decide on a color palette. And then these are some sketches that I'm gonna kind of draw from whenever I continue making sculptures throughout the year. And then during my time here, I've also been spending a lot of time teaching and then preparing for classes. This is the first time I've taught classes. So I've loved coming up with different projects for everyone. We're currently making mugs. And my classes have largely focused on function, but I'm starting to incorporate some sculptural elements as well. And this is a surface decoration demo that I did with them. And then, yeah, I've just liked the teaching experience and kind of getting to see what everyone makes. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you. Thank you for listening. The end.
Thank you, Christine. Evelyn, we'll hear from you. Thank you.
Wait, can you guys see this? Yes. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So this is my presentation, Learning How to Tell Stories by me. My name's Evelyn Mtika. And I'm really gonna go over my journey from the last year as a resident artist. This is now my second year at Clay Art Center. Just a little bit about me. I was raised in West Philly, and being raised in Philly, I was exposed to a lot of art really early. And then after going to arts high school and like doing a bunch of art programs, I got my BFA in ceramics from University of Hartford in Connecticut. And then I had my first residency at Northern Clay Center in Minnesota, which was a big jump for me, but it taught me a lot. And then I'm currently a resident here. This is my second year and it goes until August. And the first thing I really want to talk about, I'm just going to kind of recap starting from my residency show in June called Chasing Echoes. And I want to kind of go into how I started like thinking about history and storytelling. The first thing I brought from Northern Clay Center, my first residency program, kind of like my first jump into like the clay world, I don't know, like ceramics, doing anything in ceramics in like a professional setting, was these face molds. I sculpted tiny little faces and then I would cast them in clay after they got like leather hard, or like I bisqued them. And I kind of like started making little molds. The point of it was just to kind of start thinking of representation and bridging history between like the sculptures and the portraits that I would like doing. And I started adding them on to functional pieces. And this was also my first exploration into functional work as well. I'd only been doing sculpture for like the last like 3 years. So I really kind of wanted to figure out how I could incorporate these small little faces that I had kind of carried with me from my first residency into my next residency. And then also thinking about like, what can that mean to my artwork? What can that mean? Like, what am I trying to tell my audience? Because I'm always overthinking like, what is somebody seeing out of my work? So I made a set of about 8 cups and also 2 jars, and I added these little faces onto them, and I called them the Legacy series because the idea that I had for the little molds was that they were kind of like representing a family, kind of lost in history, and I wanted to kind of give them their like a little moment to shine. And then I really started thinking about sculptures as well, like, you know, how can I add that in? And this is the only sculpture I'm actually like including from the show in this presentation because I don't want to go over my time. Like I could talk about this forever, but this is the one sculpture that I think was most prevalent from the Chasing Echo show because, and actually I don't know why I didn't include it, but this, I'm going to go back a little bit. This picture on the right here is the side of my Lovers Lost at Sea pot. And I tried to incorporate it into this pot because I thought it made sense because since they're both lost, and also I'm talking about like a family tree where they have like lost history, I thought it would be really important to include it on this piece. And I started playing around with like hiding the faces. So the faces are on the inside and it makes like the people who like come up to the piece look on the inside. And that was really important for like this version of storytelling. Then I kind of pivoted after that. And I started thinking about paintings because paintings, I'm always inclined to illustrations and paintings. And even more so, how can I stretch underglaze to the point where like it kind of like becomes like loose watercolor or ink? And I remember like so clearly in my head when we had like a artist meeting. We have them like every other Tuesday. If you guys don't know, where we disappear for an hour every every other week. It's we're doing our little artist meetings. And I remember I was really struggling with this idea that I have these representational figures or sculptures or portraits, but they don't really speak like directly. They're not loud enough. And then I think Regina was just like, why don't you just use a reference? So why don't you just paint a person and put it on a piece? And I was like, yeah, you know, I could do that. I could do that. So I did it. And Augusta Savage kind of like was the beginning of this because I was like kind of hyperfixating on her story and like how like we had lost a lot of her pieces and nobody really like remembered her as like this important artist from the Harlem Renaissance. So I started painting her and then I put that in a bowl. Then I started putting it on portrait plates. And I kind of finished off my show with a collection of the sculptures, the functional pieces, but most importantly, the portrait plates. There's 5 of them. And actually these 2 that I have right here, the one on the left and right, they're both in the Hudson River Museum, which I was really happy about. They both like, they're there now, I think until March. And I think to me that kind of like told me, I was like, okay, it's reaching somebody. And then I kind of like started to, oh, this is a picture of me there. I was like, oh my God, so cool. So I did that. But then I started thinking, okay, I explored with functional work. I did my sculptures. There's still like a interesting disconnect that I'm having here. And I kind of went back to like my first inspirations, like when I first started getting into ceramics and painting. And I really love Greek vases. I like the storytelling in them. I like how they work in the round, but I also am so drawn to pre-Raphaelite paintings and John Singer Sargent specifically because his artwork is like so like rich. And I wanted to kind of find a way that I could put my history or get representation that's meaningful to me into works like this. And so I started kind of going into illustrating them on pieces of clay, on forms and vessels, really playing around with sgraffito and underglazing and like kind of pulling from Greek stories. So I think I looked at like Odysseus or I don't even know if I'm saying their names right, to be honest, but I looked at a lot of Greek stories and I would pull from the paintings and I would use them as reference. And I would subvert the subject matter just a little bit where I would make them both women and because to me it was really important. I wanted to see more sapphic inclusions in like my artwork, but then also making them Black was also very important. So I tried doing that a little bit. I was still feeling like it was pretty static. I don't know why it's not. There we go. Okay. And then this one's more recent. Oh, it's glitching. Okay. I need to give it a second. I think my computer's overheating. There we go. Oh my God. Please, I just want to get to this one page. Free me. Okay. And then I started playing around with Artemis and Callisto, because that's one of my favorite stories. It's kind of like a tragic sapphic story. And I'm not going to get into that, but I was trying to like kind of make that into my work, where like I could like still like do the portraiture and I could still do the paintings, and it was a little bit more elegant than just like kind of putting them on like a flat piece of clay. And I was using like different like techniques, like waxing like the flowers before putting down the black. Again, it just felt very static to me. So I was like still like I'm still like kind of exploring that, and I actually do have like a little bit of like my process here as far as like doing the underglaze painting goes. I kind of like go with my general sketch. You can kind of see my pencil marks, and then I do a wash, and then I kind of go into my darks, and then I bring it back up with the lights. But yeah, anyways, it was really static to me. So I was kind of like, okay, what is like the original way of storytelling to me? And I was kind of taken aback by myself. Like when I was thinking about it, I was like, I've been doing like all these stories based off of Greek literature and like things that I was introduced to in school. But the first version of storytelling that I got was like like this, it's like the kids' books, you know, the children's books. And I like the nostalgia of it, but I also thought that there was something very innocent about it that I think I felt like I was missing in my work. And I really kind of like, I strive to kind of have that look in my work, even though this is one of those things that's actually very hard for me to do. I also looked at some of the artists that I always looked up to, Shoko Teriyama and Kevin Snipes. They're very illustrative. They use like sgraffito and like different paintings, and they do a lot of sketches. So that was like my first note. I was like, okay, I'm not sketching nearly enough. Like I'm just kind of like pulling from paintings off of line, and I'm like just going for it because I think it looks cool. Like I need to be sketching more. This was my first kind of sketch to clay sketch moment. I remember sitting down on the train and drawing this out and being like, oh, this feels right. And then it was just a matter of how can I translate this into a piece? And again, this is really like, both of these are sketches to me. And then I started playing around with form and kind of how can I stretch the form and add different elements that feel playful enough, but also still communicate movement and meaning. So like thinking about like holding up like a flower bud is what it's like, a little pea pod, and doing sgraffito, which I felt was like a lot less surface level than just doing watercolor paintings. And then I think this is a recent one where I kind of did more colors, more sgraffito, and more movement. And I'm really excited to see this come out of the glaze firing, although I'm very nervous because I think some low fire clay got mixed up into it. So we're gonna see how that goes. It'll definitely be an experiment. And then this is actually one of the pieces that I'm like still working on, but is mostly finished. This is a lamp base for my little cousin. And I felt like to me, like this was like the most like sincere I was about like trying like a new art style, because I just like have her in like this little like bellflower dress. And I kind of created a story for her in my mind, of like a little Thumbelina, like making my cousin like a little Thumbelina and like imagining that with like a little light above it. So I thought that was really cute. And yeah, so that's really my journey with storytelling. And I have to say that me teaching has only furthered like this crazy, like I feel like I'm going crazy every day. Like, how can I make it so that it's super clear what I'm trying to say, but also it's not so like punchy in your face, like, oh yeah, this is totally like a painting of like whatever character. And you know, this is where to find me if you want to hear me ramble about any of the crazy things I'm doing in the studio. I am applying for grad schools right now, so I'm a little overwhelmed, but you can go check out my website if you want to see some of my past works as well, because I think like I didn't like there's so many like years past that I haven't even included, and my Instagram that I barely post on. It's right there.
Thank you, Evelyn. That was great. And thanks to all of you for sharing so much about your practice and your process and where you've your journey from. Thank you all for joining us tonight at Clay Arts Centre, and thanks to our panelists for sharing with us tonight and letting us get to know them a little bit better and know their work a little bit better. So thank you all and have a great evening.